Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Celia Monteiro Jose. I am from Mozambique and based in Mozambique. I am one of the Africa Skills Revolution competition winner for 2024. And I'm also the founder of Eco Hope, a nonprofit organization that's working in Manica, Mozambique, to empower smallholder rural women farmers to transition to climate smart farming, and also young people that we're working on the transition to climate smart farming and also on waste management initiatives. I'd like to welcome you all to the Youth at the Table webinar. This is a webinar focusing on pathways for youth inclusion in policy making. And the webinar is co-organized by Humana People to People, AUDA-NEPAD, and the International Labour Organization. Thank you so much for joining us today once again. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you are connecting from as you are already doing. I'd like also to let you know that this webinar is hosted by the Youth Foresight platform, and the Youth Foresight platform is a global knowledge facility that's jointly managed by the Global Initiative on Decent Jobs for Youth and Generation Unlimited. I'd like to also share with you a few housekeeping notes that we have on the chat, but I'm gonna reinforce it. So the session is being recorded and the recording will be made available on the event page after the webinar, and we're also going to share the link of the webpage of the event. Your microphones will be muted during the session, and please feel free to ask any questions at any time using the chat or the Q&A box that we have. We'll be monitoring those two during the sessions, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, and we'll also be answering the sessions on the questions, sorry, on the comments. So as I stated at the beginning, I am an Africa Skills Revolution competition winner, and we have an African Skills Revolution report that will be discussed in details later. And results from this report showcase that 80% of young people nominate themselves as advocates for TVET. And this reflects an important shift in the mindset of African youth, that now we do not see ourselves merely as beneficiaries of skills reform, but we're seeing ourselves becoming co-designers of the future for the continent we want. Hence, the need to include youth voices in decision and policy-making processes. And this aligns with the Be Seen and Be Heard report from the United Nations that highlights the current age imbalance in politics and how problematic that is. 69% of people across all ages, from young people to older people over 60 years old, agree that providing and promoting opportunities for young people to contribute to policymaking will strengthen the policy systems that we have right now. So with all this data in this webinar, we'll explore diverse pathways and innovative mechanisms to embed youth voices in the heart of policy. The session that we have today will highlight both grassroots and institutional approaches, from empowering young people to participate in civic movements and community decision-making, to showcasing how government and organizations can and should include youth perspectives in national and regional policy development. For the first session of the webinar, we'll have a knowledge sharing session with Ana Ramos and Nubile Swami. I'd like to invite you both. The floor is all yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Cielo. Thank you for those great introductions and also just giving context into why we're all here today. I think this is extremely exciting, especially for us at the African Union Development Agency. As introduced, although my name, as always, butchered, Mobile Zwane from the African Union Development Agency, and I serve as Program Officer under the Social Development Cluster, working under Human Capital and Institutional Development. Very happy to be here, extremely excited. I think this is also a great follow-up to some of the engagements that we've been having on youth inclusion and how we can have more youth at the table and have youth take agency in terms of some of these pressing issues that you've just highlighted briefly. I'd just ask if you could please project the slides just so everyone can follow what I'll be speaking to. And apologies that I cannot switch on my camera for this webinar. Sincere apologies for that. Okay. Now that the slides are up, I'll be delivering this presentation with my colleague Anna, who's the head of institutional relations and policy from Humana People to People. We've done quite the extensive work with Humana. They're a very valuable partner to the African Union Development Agency. And as you have seen in a lot of the engagements that you may have participated in, there's a lot of information that's being shared in terms of the statistics that currently exist of youth unemployment and us having the youngest population. Africa has 60% of the population being under 25. And you also hear things, please move on to the next slide, around the fact that by 2050, this number is expected to grow to 830 million of young people within the continent, and we are the youngest continent. So there's really a need for us to look at avenues and pathways to which young people can be employed, but also create their own employment in whatever respective spaces that they exist. But the real question here is, how do we make sure that this demographic strength becomes a driver of progress for our continent? So those are some of the conversations that we really need to cement. And I'm again emphasizing the need to have such engagements such as this webinar. So at every platform where we engage, I'll even reference the Africa Skills Week, which we had last week. One of the key messages that keeps coming through clearly is that young people want to take agency. They don't want to just be beneficiaries of policy. They want to be partners in shaping that. So in terms of the Africa Skills Revolution, which you may have seen on social media quite extensively, especially last year, this was a joint initiative from the African Union Development Agency and Humana People to People. And it was literally something that we launched during the African Union Year of Education last year. So it was really timely so that we can put youth at the center of the skills agenda. And the first aim of this campaign was to, you can move on to the next slide, please, to engage through interactive dialogues and advocacy moments. We even had various webinars and also in-person engagements where we highlighted TVET success stories and challenged old perceptions around vocational training and those pathways. So these conversations help to bring visibility to the creativity, the leadership, and some of the great work that's currently happening by young Africans who are driving change within their communities. And as Cielo mentioned, he is actually one of the winners from the competition that we ran, which I'll expand on just shortly now. So it's really inspiring to see some of the great work that's currently ongoing in TVET. It's really inspiring to see young people opening up their own businesses, hearing stories of them deciding to go the TVET way, and then they also become entrepreneurs who can then hire within their respective communities and in their national context. These are the type of stories that we really need to document and disseminate more of so that other young people can be inspired by them and have a shift in perceptions around TVET and making sure that it's perceived as a first choice as a career pathway. And then secondly, one of the things that we wanted to do with the Africa Skills Revolution campaign that we ran is to elevate through continental skills competition, the one that I just mentioned now. So through that competition that we ran last year, we had over 500 participants and entries coming from 36 countries. And this competition, in essence, just celebrated innovation in TVET, where young people submitted their entries, and a lot of them, they had to really reflect how they are being innovative in the TVET space in their national context. And it also gave young people a platform to show that practical skills can tackle real social and economic challenges across the continent and, of course, in their communities. And then one of the last things that we also wanted to do in terms of the Africa Skills Revolution is to connect from young people to young people, but also from young people to policymakers in the space that we're in. So we also had a survey that ran for a couple of months where we reached young people over 30 African countries, gathering their firsthand perceptions on what motivates them to pursue TVET and what sort of barriers that they're currently facing in the TVET landscape and how they envision their role in shaping some of these challenges that have been outlined. And this data has been extremely invaluable for us. Cielo did touch on the report that came from these findings from the competition, but as well as the survey and the voices of young people. So these activities and our goal was simply to listen directly to these young people, hear out their experiences, their challenges, their hopes for their future in TVET and skills development, and all these things then created these knowledge products. We even have digestible ways of reading through the reports, because I know that it's a bit difficult to go through reports sometimes. There's infographics that are made readily available through our Aspire platform. So I'll just type it in the chat after I deliver my presentation, and then you can go through to the portal and just look through that. So the Make Yourself Heard survey, we wanted to capture what young Africans themselves think about TVET and not what we are assuming on the other side. So firstly, some of the key findings that we saw is that 72% of the respondents said they see TVET as directly relevant to the job market. So that's really good feedback that we saw. Additionally, they also 80% believe that it plays a key role in driving national development. And then we also had 86% of the ones that filled the survey saying that they would recommend TVET to their peers, which basically shows that young people are strong ambassadors for technical vocational education and training in their respective spaces. So when we asked what draws them to TVET, many talked about the value of practical hands-on skills, things like digital literacy, entrepreneurship, soft skills, and teamwork, all very crucial aspects for the future of work in Africa's fast-changing economies. You hear this a lot in some of the discussions that you sit in on, but they also spoke candidly about some of the barriers that also exist, where they mentioned that the top three barriers that they've seen are financial constraints, things like limited access to information and fewer opportunities, especially for young people who come from the rural areas. So during the Africa Skills Revolution competition, we saw what happens when those barriers are removed. And one of our winners actually from Malawi shared how vocational training helped her start a sustainable agri-business that now employs others in her community. So these stories remind us that when young people are empowered with the right tools and support, they become engineers of transformation in their own right. And it's really beautiful to see that. So on that note, so that I don't go over time, I'll just hand over to Anna, who will walk us through what young people are asking for and how we can actually effectively respond to some of those calls to actions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nobelen. Thank you. What you have shared says so much about how young Africans see TVET today. There is such a strong sense of purpose in those voices. We can see young people want to learn skills, not just to find a job, but to build something meaningful, something that makes a difference in their communities, in their countries, in the world. And at the same time, as we will see, they are very honest about what's not working yet. They know the gaps, they know what needs to change, and what exactly, and that's exactly what the Africa Skills Revolution report captures. The report is not about abstract ideas, but it contains real experiences and practical suggestions from the young people themselves. And through the campaign and the Make Yourself Heard survey that Nobile has spoken about, young people across more than 30 African countries told us what they expect from policymakers, from educators, and from the private sector. And their message is very consistent. We want to be part of designing Africa's skills future. So they have given us 9 clear actions or call to actions that you can see here on the slide. First, they speak about real and access inclusion. What does it mean? So it's about having more well-equipped centers in rural and remote areas, scholarships for those who can't afford to pay, and systems that don't leave behind women, people with disabilities, or vulnerable youth, for example. They also talk about modern and relevant training, curricula that reflect real jobs in in-demand areas like renewable energy, digital technology, healthcare, etc., etc., and a curricula that, in addition to theory, combines practical learning with soft skills and entrepreneurship. We all know that entrepreneurship is so important in today's world, and that's another of the calls they ask. It's another of the areas they ask for support on. Many young Africans dream of starting something of their own, a small business, a cooperative, a community solution. And some others, maybe it's not their dream, but it's the only solution they have. It's the only option because the labor market cannot absorb their capacity. So young people are asking for business training, for mentoring, for better linkages to financing institutions, seed funds to get started, etc. Fourth, they are calling for true gender equality, and that goes from tackling the barriers that keep women out of technical fields, STEM, to offering childcare and flexible schedules, or making sure, and this is also very important, making sure that every training environment is safe and inclusive. They also talk about the digital transformation. They want us to embrace the digital transformation, and we cannot avoid it any longer. They are asking for blended and online learning, which can at the same time increase accessibility to learning. They ask for digital literacy to be part of every course and to make use of digital tools for example, mentoring networks that can connect learners across borders. The next point is very relevant, very important, especially with the topic of today's session, and is that they want their voices to count. Young people are asking to be part of the conversation, and not just once, but continuously, regularly. So through youth councils, consultations, and feedback mechanisms that make policy making a two-way process. They also want stronger partnerships between governments, training institutions, and the private sector. They expect these partnerships to ensure that what is taught, what they learn, connects directly to what employers need. And they also expect from these partnerships to offer internships and real pathways into work, also new innovative financing mechanisms. They expect the private sector to invest more in the TVET system as well. They also want our support to change the narrative around TVET. One of the ultimate goals of the Africa Skills Revolution campaign was to reshape, to improve the image of TVET, especially across the continent in Africa. We shared stories of amazing young people who are doing incredible things. And What young people want is the world to see what they already know. That vocational training is a first choice. It's a first choice to innovation, to leadership, to entrepreneurship, and to self-reliance. And the last point they make is that they want TVET to align with the Africa's long-term vision under the 2063 agenda. They see TVET as a driver of green jobs, digital transformation, and sustainable growth. And they want that connection made explicit in policy. And for me, this last point is what ties it all together. This isn't just about training for employment, it's about preparing a generation to build the Africa they want, which is an Africa that is skilled, that is empowered, that is inclusive and sustainable. And I would like to finish with a personal reflection. If we give young people the space and the means to lead, they will build the future themselves. So our job is just to make sure that the systems, the policies, and the trust, which is also very important, are there to let them do it. Thank you very much. Over to you, Celio. And by the
Thank you so
way, we
much.
will share, sorry, I forgot to mention this, but you can access the Africa Skills Revolution report on the chat. I'm sure that my colleagues have shared them already.
Yes,
So feel
I think
free
I've seen
to,
it on the chat.
perfect.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you so much, Nobile. And sorry, Nobile, for butchering your name. I am a native Portuguese speaker, so some names are hard for me. But thank you so much for this session. I think what stood out to me during the session is how important it is to make sure the young people have employment opportunities or ensuring that they are able to provide those opportunities for themselves and for other people. And thank you so much for the Africa Skills Revolution competition and campaign. As one of the beneficiaries, as one of the winners, I got to not only to be here right now with you, but also to see other young people from Africa that are doing amazing. I did a webinar with Adaugo from Nigeria and Jonathan from Rwanda, and they're doing amazing in their own communities. So it was really good to see, and it's awesome to see that you're not the only one that's fighting for a better Africa. So thank you so much for that. For our next session, I'd like to invite Terence Makumbe. He's going to talk us through a case study on youth empowerment from a bottom-up approach. Over to you, Terence. You're on mute, Terence, please. You're on mute. We still can't hear you. Oh,
Can you hear me? All right.
yes, yes.
All right. Thank you for having me. My name is Terence Makumbe. I am the principal of Policymaking Technical College, a college that is operated by DAP Zimbabwe. And we would say that it's also it's located in Shamba district in Mashonaland Central Province. And also the youth, it also targets the youths who are actually disadvantaged in the rural communities. And the youths, we are looking at the age groups from 15 to 35 years. And as a college, we've also short courses and long courses. When we talk of long courses, these are courses that actually takes about 1 to 3 years, the training. And the short courses, which also culminated by collaborating with other universities in Zimbabwe, also to create and also to amplify the youth voices, and also to so them they can also, we can have a curriculum that actually responds to the dynamics and the industries and also to their needs. And these short courses, they are for 8 months. So I'll just take you through the first slide, which is also that we've also trained 10,000 students that have graduated up to now, up to date. We can actually say that in these courses, they also have the entrepreneurship background and also in sustainable agriculture, smart agriculture, and also short-term needs for the youth that they can also have some kind of a life in the skill, creating opportunities and pathways so that they can also contribute to the nation economy and also to their personal development. I can see that from the communities that we have around, these are poor communities that actually do mostly agriculture. And actually the college and the skills, the TVET skills are actually very crucial in a way that um, they are actually plugging the gap between the university institutions and also the youth that are unemployed. Just to say that actually from the demographics, we have 46% of youth in the country. They constitute 46%, so to say. And actually from that's a huge percentage of youths, and mostly they are employed, and employment is around 49%. So maybe we can go to the next slide, please. All right, so as these young people, as I've said before, the skills and the green skills, they are there to actually include even those that are disadvantaged, people living with disabilities, for example. And also we've involved the youths in the crafting of these courses in a way that will also create synergies with other colleges around, with the university that is working with us, consulting on youth, and also so that they contribute to the policy on the youth policy framework for Zimbabwe, and also pointing out what their needs are and what areas of training and also the challenges also they are facing. So this is quite actually an inspiring and also quite in a way that we can include the youths, not to say, because if it is for the youths, then the youths have to take part and also they have to be part of the curriculum development. Then these training programs, we can actually see that they are a bit flexible, and we've also crafted from the other short courses, we've also consulted on youths on other courses that we are doing on outreach programs. These outreach programs, they answer actually to the inclusion of youth in a way that if they don't have the means and ways to actually go for a skills training, we have an outreach program that goes into the communities. We train them in other courses like agroforestry, apiculture, aquaculture, and they are also doing smart car farming. They are doing mushroom production, which is also something that they can have a voice and also a way of creating opportunities for them as youths. I can tell you that just maybe this year, up to this year, we are going to around 240 youths that will be trained actually in those outreach programs, which is actually a result of actually the youth inclusion and also in those policies. And we've been receiving overwhelming responses also from youths. And we continue to give these youths nearby in nearby communities that are surrounding the school. So this is what about the other courses. And to ascend to say that we also do other synergies with other organizations also, including Youth Voices, to say that They can also contribute in terms of soft skills. What is it that is lacking? Because the industry, one thing is to have skills, then without the soft skills for you to go far. So the soft skills are more of the software that actually assist youth in also actually in their entrepreneurship skills and also in their endeavors whilst creating opportunities. So these are the other consultations that we've been having, and also to say that and then the youth, as I mentioned, their focuses and from what we have, just maybe to share, we'll be having more of a graduation ceremony soon. Actually, for those youths that are deemed maybe they've not gone through the formal education system, but they've also managed to have opportunities and they have their skills training, and they are also happy about it. And some are turning to entrepreneurs. So TVET is not only a second choice, but it's also a voice for the youth. And we've seen that over the years. And due to other socioeconomic factors that maybe universities and others that goes to other institutions of learning, they might also consider or think that maybe for you to do it, vet skills, and it might not be a good way of actually improving oneself economy and development. So this is about it. This is about Pony 7. Could you go to the next slide, please? And thank you so much for having me. I hope I didn't exceed time.
No, I think you didn't. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Terrence.
sure.
Yes, this was amazing. It's really awesome to see the work that you guys are doing. And what stood out to me is that you have formed already 10,000 entrepreneurs. That's
Yes.
impressive. And it's really good that you guys are putting young people in co-designing the programs and a diverse range of young people, young people with disabilities. Even though we're youth, we are a group, but we have different needs and different perspectives and opinions. So it's good that you guys are including everyone in making the programs that are going to benefit us. Thank you so much, Terrence.
Thank you.
Now we'd like to take 3 to 5 minutes on a Mentimeter poll with all the participants of the webinar, sorry. We're going to share the Menti link on the screen, also on the chat. So please join and contribute. We want to hear your opinions. Yes, we have the instructions on the chat, so please join. Yes, we also have instructions on the screen. Join. We want to hear your opinion. Yes, I see people joining. Thank you. I think maybe we can go to the first question. Thank you. Yuri, there's a link on the chat. You can join with the instructions that we have on the chat. So the first question is, when you hear youth participation in policymaking, what's the first word or idea that comes to mind? You see some words: fresh, inclusive, future, relevance, taking charge, dialogue, decision, empowerment, inclusive and future as the most voted words. New ideas, stability, tailored. Tailored is good. Prerequisite. Okay. Real actions. Yes, there's comments on the chat. Real actions. Gerontocracy. Okay, I'm not sure I know what the word means, but Youth empowerment, fresh, yeah, really amazing words, but future, inclusive, and inclusion are the main words when we hear about youth participation in policymaking. And I think that ties up to the presentations that we had just now from Anna, Nobile, and Terence. So yeah, we're happy that you guys are on the same page as us. I think we can go to the next question. Thank you so much, everyone. So the next question is, what are the biggest barriers preventing youth from influencing TVET or skill development programs? So you can start voting. What are the biggest barriers preventing youth from influencing TVET or skill development program? Is it lack of access to policymakers, limited resources or platforms, a lack of skills or confidence, cultural or institutional resistance, limited awareness of existing participation opportunities, a lack of mentorship or role models, weak coordination between youth groups and institutions, or a lack of data or evidence from youth to influence policy? So far, lack of access to policymaker is the most voted, followed by limited resources or platforms. I assess that the biggest barrier is that people don't believe in youth. Yes, lack of access to policymakers is still the biggest barrier. Yes. So from our poll, we see that some of the biggest barriers preventing youth from influencing TVET or skill development programs are a lack of access to policymakers as the first barrier, and then limited resources or platforms, and limited awareness of existing participation opportunities. Thank you so much, guys. I think we can go to the next and last question. So the last question is, what would make youth engagement in policymaking more effective in your country? Yes, in your country, what would make youth engagement in policymaking more effective? We want to hear from you. Buy-in, more opinions. Accessible forums, yes. Providing examples of where voices have been directly heard in action. Confidence in youth to take charge, more awareness, co-creation, dialogue spaces, accessible forums, commitment to meaningful and not tokenistic engagement. I assess in the chat that giving youth the space to show themselves. Access to political seats, yes. Involving the youth at the grassroots level so that they have more information. Intentional inclusion in policymaking, role models, social dialogue opportunities, government support, public media forums dialogue, more youth inclusion in policies that impacts our future. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving us your opinions on these questions. These are really valuable, and they go hand in hand with the resources that we've shared so far. So please, when you have time, go check those resources. Thank you so much. I'd like to pass now to another session of our webinar, and now we're going to hear a second case study from Bai and Nubile, and they're going to talk about youth inclusion in policy, a top-down approach to policymaking. Over to you, Bai.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, based on where you are. My name is Bai Sambu. I'm a technical officer working on skills and enterprise development for the International Labour Organization. So I'm based at the ILO Decent Work Technical Team, based in Dakar. So for those who may be less familiar, the ILO is the United Nations Specialized Agencies for the World of Work. So it's my pleasure to be with you today to share insight on our new guidance tool for meaningful youth engagement in TVET that we are developing with AUDA-NEPAD. We have heard from the previous speakers, and they have shared with us all the challenges that young people are facing in the world of work in accessing technical vocational education and training. So this is why today we are developing this guide to share how are we going to do like meaningful youth engagement in TVET. So this guidance tools goes beyond traditional consultation. It embraces co-creations. So our goal is to ensure that the voices, the vision, and the value of young people are not just shared, but meaningfully reflected in the institutions that shape their future. So at the ILO, we take a very balanced approach to skills development that values not only what the labor market needs, but also the goals, interests, and potential of every individuals. And as you know, also the ILO is a standard setting agency. So these principles is also rooted in the ILO Human Resource Development Convention 142, which reminds us that training policies must enable all persons to develop and use their capabilities in their own best interest and in line with their aspirations. So the key word here is aspirations, right? While it is important to match skill supply and demand, at the same time, we also need to take into consideration the aspirations of learners, because this is equally important. Like matching skills demand with supply is important, but it is equally important to make sure that we have the voices of young people throughout the TVET life cycle. And also this commitment is reinforced in the ILO skills and lifelong learning strategy, which calls that it is important also we get the feedback and the perspective of learners about the TVET courses. So maybe I would ask to pull up the slide. Yes, yeah, integrating youth aspiration and engagement in TVET is very important, but in practice, we know that many training programs still remain too narrowly focused on aligning with market needs. They often overlook the lived experiences, ambitions, and creativity of young people, and this also miss the chances to engage them as a true partners in the learning process, right? So now, if you think about the TVET, ecosystem, there are different entry points to make sure that we engage young people at every stage. Because at every stage of this journey, there is a rich and diverse opportunities for youth engagement, from shaping curricula and training design to influencing how skills are recognized. But yet, we know it in practice, youth participations remain very limited. Too often, young people are seen just as beneficiaries of TVET system training programs rather than as co-creators and partners in shaping them. So this is the whole purpose of this guidance manual. So let's say, we know all the challenges that exist in the labor market, that exist in the TVET space. But then now, if you want to go ahead and try to implement some youth engagement practices, how it will look like in practice. So this is what we are trying to develop. So this guidance invite us to rethink how we design, deliver, and evaluate skills development to move from doing things for young people, but doing it with young people. Can you move to the next slide? So, youth engagement, there are different levels when it comes to meaningful youth engagement. So this slide illustrates the different levels of youth engagement and help us to reflect on where we stand today. And at the very, the most basic level, young people are often informed or just consulted but they have little influence over outcomes. So this is the first, this is like very common to see young people being just informed or consulted, but they are not actually contributing to the decision making. They are not actually being involved as a partner or as a key contributors. So these are the different levels of where we see young people can be involved in throughout the TVET ecosystem, and these different levels align closely with the UN framework on meaningful youth engagement in TVET, which remind us that participation become meaningful only when young people move beyond being consulted to actively contributing, partnering with institutions, and ultimately leading initiative. So the goal of our guidance tool is to build on this logic. It provides practical steps to help institutions create the space, support, and authority that young people need to influence decision at each stage of the TVET ecosystem. So yeah, this is what we are doing, and as an example of meaningful youth engagement in TVET, and we are doing this with young people. I would like my colleague Nobile from AUDA-NEPAD to introduce how we are doing in practice, how this guide is being developed, and how are we going to incorporate youth feedback as part of this guide. So Nobile, take it away.
Thank you so much, Bai, for that context and taking us through. One important question I think you raised was, what does meaningful youth engagement look like in practice? So for us on our side, in terms of our collaboration with the ILO and the African Union Development Agency, we had recently what we call the ATUPA annual conference. ATUPA stands for Association of Technical Universities and Polytechnics in Africa. And they are basically a Pan-African association of technical universities and polytechnics where they support professional and skills development, especially in TVET systems across Africa. So during that annual conference, we had this in August in Durban. And there were a lot of rich discussions that we had with young people. We really capitalized on the fact that they were all in one space, which was quite nice. And we had 6 categories or groups of young people that we came up with based on, I think that was the first slide that Bai had up initially in his presentation. And the questions that we had crafted out were, that we needed feedback from the young people was, what are the most effective ways of young people to engage at this stage? But also we asked that they provide concrete examples and state which level of engagement this is, and then also what they needed to have youth engagement move from what Baye was speaking of in terms of consultation to contribution to partnership, but also getting to a point where they can also feel like they're leaders in the process. So we received quite a bit of feedback and inputs from the young people in the group discussions, which it was very vibrant in the room. If you are not there, I strongly encourage you to attend next year. There's always a lot of young people and a presence of many youth voices in a lot of the discussions. But basically, some of the concrete examples of youth-led engagements across different stages that we saw were at the anticipation stage, where young people emphasize structured consultative mechanisms like youth labor forums and sector dialogues, where their lived experiences can directly shape skills, projections, and national training priorities. And then at the implementation stage, they highlighted the importance of peer-to-peer mobilization models, where one of the examples that even came out strongly was the Ajira digital program in Kenya, which was used as an example of youth leadership in action. So with this one, we saw that over 250 trained ambassadors drive digital skills uptake. There's things around mentoring from peer-to-peer mentorship. Sorry, English. Wow, there for a second. And then also it was just things around challenging negative perceptions in the informal workspace. And then there were strong elements also, as per usual, around advocacy and partnership stages where youth proposed co-designing awareness campaigns, joining national TVET councils, and partnering with the private sector, which is extremely important in our line of work and also in the TVET landscape, to ensure policy reflects real labor market needs. And I think by expressed the importance of those links between the supply and demand side in the TVET space. But overall, the young people call for more institutionalized channels that move engagement from once-off consultations to co-ownership, and also backed by recognition, mentorship, and also, of course, the resourcing elements and aspects that were always cementing in our area of work. So these insights that we drew from the discussions with those young people during the conference are then are now being consolidated in this youth engagement guide that Baye was speaking on, which will then serve as our joint tool between ILO and ourselves at the African Union Development Agency to embed the youth participation systematically in our programs and policy making process. So yeah, we really cannot wait for it to be disseminated, for you to read through, engage, and just to utilize within various member states, because we do understand that a large part of the documents is really youth-centric and coming from young people based on this very interactive process that we wanted to follow in our youth engagement efforts. So yeah, I'll stop there and hand back over to Cielo for the next item on the agenda. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nobile, and thank you, Pai, on the amazing session. Now we're also going to have another mentee with only one question. We heard in the session on the importance of youth engagement in TVET, and we want to hear from you. What's the level of engagement of young people in TVET in your country? We have the mentee instructions on the chat. Yes, back to mentee activity. We have the instructions on the chat, and we have one question. What is the level of youth engagement in TVET in your country? Please join the Mentimeter and answer this question. We have one answer. Youth are not involved at all in TVET. In the country, youth are consulted. Young people are providing meaningful contribution. Another option is that young people are engaged as partners. And the last option, the deepest level of engagement is youth leaders involved in contributing to decision-making process in TVET. So yes, so far, young people are not involved and consulted only are winning. So please join the Mentimeter and tell us what is the level of youth engagement in TVET in your country. Okay, it's even now. It's even, but yeah, we see that. Oh, we have one now. I wonder which country is that where young people are involved as leaders. Yes, thank you so much for the mentee. Thank you so much for your contribution. Now we're going to pass to the Q&A session. We have some questions. And if you also have questions, you can drop in the chat. So the first question is for Terence. Terence Ngonizache is asking, how can young people in rural areas access opportunities in TVET programs given limited resources and infrastructure?
All right. First of all, I'll give an example of what we've been doing, which is a practical example, whereby we actually have a program that actually working with the youths that are around. We have the 4 thematic courses that I've said before, to say that we can have this outreach program so that it's near in terms of resources, that we take the projects or the programs to the youth in their rural setup, whereby you don't need a lot of resources for you to actually set up. So it's just training. You can make use of schools, even, tree shades. Then you could be training youths on their skills training. They don't need to pay that much, or maybe for institution, even for their fees. So it's also one of them. Then we could also work with issues to do with using digital platforms, whereby they can also come creating hub centers where in the communities, whereby these youths can also come and also learn others digital skills, and also they can also use certain platforms for them to actually get trained on certain skills. But overall, I think it's an issue of policy and support, even from all institutions, and also as other organizations, so that the youths can also have their support. This is also some of the examples practically what we've been doing also with the youths, and we've also seen some results, and they will feel much closer and also connected. They own up the program because they are in their raw setup. Remember that as an agricultural society where we are, they also need to balance, to say they go to the fields, they go to this. So it's actually a balanced approach, so that the youth can also gain their skills. I would say that for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terence. Now to Anna, there's a question from Stefan. They're asking what specific mechanisms can be put in place to ensure that youth voices are not only heard, but also meaningful, integrated.
Thank you very much. As my colleague Bay said, for youth to be meaningfully engaged, we need to take them from being consulted to other stages. So listening to youth is only the first step, and that's what we have done with the Africa Skills Revolution. But the real challenge is now turning those insights into action. And I think that 3 things need to happen to make youth participation truly meaningful. First, we need formal structures for youth participation. We have heard that that's it's lacking, so this can be national or regional youth advisory councils under ministries of education or labor. It can also be at the TVET college level. And these councils shouldn't be symbolic. They should have like a defined role in reviewing the TVET policies, the curricula, contributing to the strategy updates, and of course, monitoring implementation. The second point I would say is we need feedback loops, accountability, ways to show how youth input is being used. Because when youth see that their ideas are reflected in policy documents, programs, strategies, the trust grows and participation becomes more real. It's not symbolic, it's not performative. And the third and last point I want to make is about capacity and continuity. Youth representatives need mentoring, training, and especially continuity across policy cycles. So the learning is not lost every time there is a change in the leadership. So yeah, I would just stay with these 3 points. Of course, we can mention many more, but I think those 3, if we manage to institutionalize those mechanisms, so that advisory councils, feedback mechanisms, and ongoing capacity building, youth participation can become part of the system itself, instead of being just a one-off, one-time event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. One last question for Nobile. We have a question from Aftab. They're asking, what are the monitoring strategies for TVET training to enhance its impact on productive employment?
Thank you so much for that question, Cielo. And I didn't get where you said it was coming from, but it's fine. Anyways, from our side at AUDA-NEPAD, we approach the monitoring of TVET training, and it's linked to productive employment through a very youth-centered and evidence informed approach. So for us, one of the key instruments in achieving this is the Africa Skills Portal for Youth Employment and Entrepreneurship. That's the SPY portal, where I placed the link in the chat. Please do go ahead and just have a look through it. So through Aspire, we curate and share evidence-based practices, of course, demonstrating how TVET leads to employment, entrepreneurship, or self-employment, if you must. And a particularly exciting part of the portal and its value addition has been the toolkits developed through learning communities. So over the past few years, we've worked very closely with our colleagues from GIZ to facilitate 3 thematic learning communities, which are basically focusing on areas such as public sector engagement, inclusive TVET systems, and also youth participation. And these communities bring together member states, some of the Skills Initiative for Africa grantees, but also implementing partners. And out of this collaboration, then emerge practical tools for monitoring and improving TVET delivery. So we have toolkits. There's 3 of them that currently exist, where we have frameworks for TVET program design, employer engagement, youth feedback loops, and also gender responsive approaches that are outlined within those tools, which we co-developed with some of the SIFA grantees. That's the Skills Initiative for Africa. So all of this ensuring that they're grounded in local realities and now accessible through the portal, and also for the uptake of member states in this work. So we've also been working in the past couple of months on the revamping and expanding of the actual portal so that we expand on its ability to track and also to track the transition from training to employment. So how we're doing this is through including youth voices of the alumni stories, which we've spoken extensively on, particularly through initiatives such as the Africa Skills Revolution, but also encouraging member states to integrate those tools into national TVET M&E systems. So within the continental TVET strategy, it explicitly mentions the Aspire as an advocacy tool, but in and above that, there's an M&E framework draft that we worked on this year with the African Union, which then speaks to the Aspire platform and it being one of the indicators that are going to be used for the tracking of the CTVET implementation plan. So it's really, really important, this portal, and that's just some of the ongoing work that we have on our side to answer your question in terms of monitoring. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nobile. In interest of time, we will not be able to answer more questions, but if you guys have more questions, you can post them in the Youth Foresight platforms. We are all there and we will be able to answer them all. I'd like to thank everyone who is still here with us and all our panelists for this webinar. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. As I stated in the beginning, this webinar is being recorded and the session will be made available at the event web page, and we'll share the link on the chat. Before leaving, I'd like to ask the technical team to give us the feedback form, and I'd like to ask you participants to fill out the feedback form that's showcasing on your screen, I believe. Yes, it is. Thank you so much, technical team. Please provide feedback on the session, and I'd like also to reference once again that this webinar is being hosted by the Youth Foresight platform, that is a global knowledge facility jointly managed by the Global Initiative on Decent Jobs for Youth and Generation Unlimited. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.